Welcome back to my channel, where today I'll be going over color theory and how to use it in your crafts. Typically, I usually go over more crochet or crochet adjacent content, but I thought I'd zoom out and explore how a concept like color theory can be used not only in just basic art, but also more specifically in a medium like crochet and knitting. In this video, I hope to outline the fundamentals of color theory and then explore how it can be used in fiber arts like crochet as well as beyond there. I'm going to first talk about what is color theory, hit on some fundamentals, explore why you should use it and how you can use it, and then give you some resources before concluding. Color theory is defined as a combination of art and science that explains how colors interact and how they can be used to achieve specific visual and emotional responses. In summary, it describes how you can pick certain colors in order to achieve specific goals. So it might be that you're looking for a visual effect, or it could be that you're going for something eliciting an emotional response. Either way, color theory can help you with these things. Fundamentals. There are three primary fundamentals when it comes to color theory. You have the color wheel, color harmony, and context. For context, I would say that it's more of a self-explanatory one. It's something that I think we all unconsciously think about whenever we are going over or picking colors, even if we don't gauge that we're actually doing it. But it's essentially the perceived emotion and meaning of color in relation to their setting and other colors. Color wheel is an actual wheel of colors that is a visual representation of primary, secondary, and tertiary colors. Primary colors are going to include your yellow, blue, and red, which can mix together to create secondary colors like orange or green. Then you have tertiary colors, which can result from the mixing of primary with secondary colors or secondary colors with each other. For color harmony, it's going to describe the relationship between colors and how they're presented among each other. So essentially how if you're pairing a red with something like green, it's going to have a different visual effect from pairing it with something more similar like a red-orange. I kind of described context a little bit, but when I think of context, it's kind of like an extension of color harmony in that you're having a lot of the same considerations, but you're also thinking about sort of the setting that it's in, as well as, what kind of emotions that you're trying to go for. For the color wheel, there are warm versus cool colors, which is kind of like at the base of when you're going over the color wheel. You can actually visually draw a line in order to see the dichotomy. And you'll probably note, again, unconsciously, that cool colors are associated with things like winter. You think of the blues and the more wintry sort of almost doled out vibes. Whereas then you have warmer colors, which are kind of more vibrant due to the fact that they're just kind of brighter. But there's also a couple more definitions that I think are important for you to know, just when you're using it in your basic vernacular, as well as how you would describe colors. So you have the hue, which is the overall color base. So think yellow, just yellow in general. Then you have the tint and shade, which you're getting then more into more of the kind of yellow. So for instance, when you talk about tint, it's that color base plus an amount of white, whereas shade is a color base plus an amount of black. If you have more tint, you're going to have a lighter color overall, versus if you have more shade, where you're going to have a darker color. Then you have tone, which is essentially the color base plus gray. If you mix white and black, you come up with some iteration of gray. So that's essentially saying it's the color base plus an amount of white plus an amount of black. For color harmony, I would say that there are three kind of main relationships that we can explore. There are obviously more, and there's more extensive theory out there, but because this is just a basic video covering color theory, we're only going to go over three. So we have complementary colors, which reside directly across from each other on the color wheel, and they're going to be more of the pairing that you're looking for if you're going for something that with high contrast. Then you have analogous colors, which appear adjacent to each other on the color wheel. And this is really, if you are, the example that I sort of think about for analogous colors is if you, for instance, are going for a certain emotion. So you might want to really hone in on, like let's say you want to convey sadness. You're going to hone in on using a lot of blues, not the same blues, because obviously you're going to want to like have shaded areas, you're going to want to have lighter areas and things like that, but you're going to use blues that are like right next to each other on the color wheel, and they work together because they present the same strength. You're still using blue, but because they have just slight variations of the different kinds of blue, so maybe one on the warmer side, one on the cooler side, that's essentially what's going to give you the relationship being just as strong, even though there's not as much high contrast. Then you have monochromatic, where you're using one single base color, but you're using variations of the hue, tint, tone, and shade. I kind of confused or maybe muddled the definitions of analogous versus monochromatic colors, but don't worry, because I'm going to go over these relationships in a bit more depth. So for complementary colors, I mentioned that they're essentially ones that offer high contrast from one another and can be found directly across from each other on the color wheel. If you're pairing two colors, then you just use the line method, where you would go to, your desired color, and then you'd literally just draw a line directly across, and that would give you your complementary color. But if you're adding, for instance, more colors that you're using, then you can pair them up using other shapes. So for instance, if you have 3 colors, it would be an equilateral triangle, 4 for a square, 5 for a pentagon, and so on and so forth. The point here overall, though, that I want you to get from this is, though, the complementary colors equals high contrast. Next up, we have analogous colors. I mentioned that they're essentially ones that appear next to each other on the color wheel. And so opposed to complementary colors that contrast each other, analogous colors sort of work together to create this unspoken harmony. And this is done by essentially not overpowering each other and instead providing a similar hue, which is what gives it that common sort of goal that they're working towards. Then we have monochromatic colors. Now these create harmony due to it being the same base color, but because you're varying the tints and shades, you're still getting a contrast. I'd like to think of it as sort of the middleman of analogous versus complementary. Context. I kind of mentioned before how unconsciously we all kind of already have a solid gauge for context when it comes to colors. But if we want to talk about it a little further, it can be displayed by this example. So if you have, for instance, rectangles, they're the exact same purple, but notice how it doesn't seem that way because of the fact that they're appearing among 2 different colors. So you have one that its background is a cooler toned blue versus having the background of more of a warmer purple. When you have the square among the blue, it kind of appears warmer itself, but I also feel like it kind of almost blends, versus when it's among the purple, it almost washes it out a little bit more. Obviously, this is my sort of interpretation of it. You could have a completely, totally different one, but just we both probably can agree, though, that rather than it being 3 colors, which is what it actually is, it does appear as 4 colors. Why should you use color theory? Overall, it can help you create pieces that are complementary, not the definition we went over before, but just in general, that complement one another and are appealing, thus being more desirable to you and or whatever your audience is. So whether you're gifting it to someone else, or maybe you're interested in selling your pieces, but you want to make sure that the colors that you're picking for your designs are ones that would actually be aesthetically pleasing. It can answer questions like, what colors go with the current season? What colors look more vibrant? What colors should I use for a more casual setting? Will this design look better with different shades of the same color, or should I use completely different colors? These are all things that color theory can answer for you, and thus why you should use it. How you can use it. I've kind of broken this down into 3 steps overall. So the first step is to think about what you're creating and what the occasion is. This is you thinking, what is it called? Specifically sort of about the context and color harmony, but don't worry about like answering color questions that are super specific to those definitions we went over. In general, just think about, okay, what am I creating? Why am I creating it? What's the occasion? Like, is it more casual? Is it more formal? Is it more whimsical? Think about stuff like that. Even season, those kinds of questions. This is going to help you overall garner like a base of, okay, like sort of your goals, setting up your goals. Step 2 is going to be, based on that information, deciding if it's best to use complementary, analogous, or monochromatic colors. This isn't necessarily a straightforward sort of deal, because at this point you kind of just have a list of objectives, so you might want to play around on the color wheel for a little bit to like figure out different color combinations that work or don't work. From there, you should have likely like a palette or an idea of, some colors on a palette. And so you're going to pick a primary color. Ideally, this is going to be more on the neutral side, and it's really going to depend on what kind of effect you're going for. So kind of what we talked about in step 1, where are you looking for more vibrancy/pop, or do you want it to be more understated and muted? Common neutral primary colors are going to be like black, white, tan, gray. And your black and white is going to be more if you want like a pop, whereas if you're looking for more of an understated or muted kind of vibe, then you're going to want more of a tan or a gray. Resources. I often talk about colors here on my channel, and that's because I personally use it and I really like it. But you also have the option of other color palette generators such as Peloton or Colormind, so feel free to check those out if you're interested. Color theory as a whole is a fundamental but useful art concept that I feel like can help with not only art mediums that you think about traditionally, like painting, drawing, and digital art, but also fiber arts like crochet and knitting. Thank you so much. If you got to this point and you enjoyed the video, please give it a like, and if you want similar videos, then consider subscribing.